President Obama says he never did like his own plan to train rebels in Syria and cites climate change as an example of his global leadership. His special report. Good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Brett Baer. President Obama insists Russia is making what he calls unforced errors in a superpower poker game over Syria and the Middle East. The president's climate change and the Iran nuclear deal. Correspondent Kevin Corke has tonight's top story from the White House.
Asked about the failed program to train and equip Syrian fighters, President Obama told 60 Minutes Sunday that he never believed in the plan in the first place, despite its $500 million price tag.
This is why I've been skeptical from the get-go about the notion that we were going to effectively create this proxy army inside of Syria.
But if he was so skeptical of the strategy, which has already cost taxpayers tens of millions of dollars, he certainly didn't show it in 2014.
Tonight I call on Congress again to give us additional authorities and resources to train and equip these fighters.
But with fewer than a dozen fighters to show for its investment, the White House last week scrapped the program, a move ridiculed by critics, including Russian President Vladimir Putin, who was quoted by the TASS news agency as saying, "They should have given that money to us. We could use it more effectively in fighting international terrorism, no doubt about it." Indeed, Putin's forces have been effective as they continue to support the Bashar al-Assad regime. But just whom they're targeting in the process is debatable. The Russians say they've hit ISIS hard, with 55 sorties over the past 24 hours. But President Obama says Putin's plan is deeply flawed.
If you think that running your economy into the ground and having to send troops in order to prop up your only ally is leadership, then we've got a different definition of leadership. My definition of leadership would be leading on climate change and international accord that potentially will get in Paris.
White House officials insist the U.S. isn't engaged in a proxy war with Moscow, but Pentagon officials tell Fox News 50 tons of small arms and grenades were airdropped by the U.S. to opposition forces in Syria over the weekend. This on the heels of reports that U.S.-made BGM-71 tow missiles have also been shipped to Syrian rebels as part of a covert program 2 years in the making to battle Assad. President Obama insists the Russians are propping up Assad out of fear, but analysts say it's the president who's afraid to meet Moscow head-on.
If we continue to wring our hands and be absorbed by our own fear of that escalation and confrontation, and we continue to be unwilling to instill fear in our adversaries, Russian aggression is going to increase in the Middle East.
Brett, the president was also asked why he went ahead with the Syrian fighter program that he obviously doubted. He said part of his duty as commander-in-chief is to try different things. A very expensive experiment in this case. Brett?
On this with the panel, Kevin Corke live on the North Lawn. Kevin, thank you. Hundreds of people today marched in the Turkish capital of Ankara to condemn the suicide bombings that killed dozens and wounded hundreds at a peace rally. The march turned into an anti-government protest, with demonstrators accusing the government of Turkey of not taking measures to protect the rally or even being behind the deadly attack. Here's Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen.
Across Turkey, funerals and protests. As the investigation continues into Saturday's bomb blast at a peace rally in the capital, Ankara, believed to have been carried out by 2 male suicide bombers and to have killed at least 97 people, many of them supporters of opposition and Kurdish groups long at odds with the government. Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu has hinted at ISIS and Kurdish separatists as possible culprits and has rounded up 45 suspected ISIS members in 4 cities since Saturday.
Some DNA testing is being done. A determination has been made on the suicide bombers' profile regarding how they reached the square and how they carried the bomb.
Protesters have suggested the attack might have been the work of the Turkish government, which is looking to reclaim its parliamentary majority in elections set for November 1st. Opposition leader Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, after meeting with the Prime Minister on Sunday, linked the carnage to Turkey's stepped-up involvement in Syria, including allowing U.S. fighter planes to launch anti-ISIS strikes from Turkish bases.
The foreign policy that we are pursuing has brought terror to our country.
With more than 2 million Syrian refugees having crossed the 500-mile border into Turkey and Russian warplanes violating Turkish airspace last week, Ankara has felt the effects of the Syrian civil war as perhaps no other foreign country, and that has led to speculation about still other potential suspects in Saturday's attack.
There are regional powers who do not want to see Turkey intervening in Syria, and that would go as far as the Iranian intelligence services and their allies in Syria.
Prior to the bombing, the State Department had been expressing concern about heavy-handed tactics allegedly being used by the Turkish government in the run-up to the parliamentary elections.
We're concerned by the increasing number of investigations in the media outlets for criticism of the government and for accusations of allegedly disseminating terrorist propaganda.
For the Obama administration, the volatility in Turkey, a reluctant coalition partner in the anti-ISIS campaign, presents still another unwelcome complication in Washington's already challenged effort to reclaim territory from the Islamic State and to hasten the departure of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Brett?
James, thank you. NATO says 2 Americans were among the 5 troops killed in a helicopter crash Sunday in Kabul, Afghanistan. 2 Britons and a French civilian contractor also died. It's believed the chopper hit a monitoring balloon. The next step in proceedings against accused deserter Sergeant Bo Bergdahl is up to a top Army general. Bergdahl's attorney says the officer who presided over the most recent hearing has recommended the case be referred to a misdemeanor level forum with no prison time or punitive discharge. Bergdahl was in Taliban custody for several years until being traded for 5 of the terror group's commanders. Now to Congress. While members of Congress enjoy a week-long Columbus Day vacation, just who will be in charge in the House remains uncertain tonight. Correspondent Rich Edson has the latest on the search for a speaker.
Senior Republicans want this congressman to be the next House Speaker. He's the chairman of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee. He has passed multiple times on the opportunity to run, yet an intense lobbying campaign to draft him has halted the contest for House Speaker. If Paul Ryan decides to run, he's the heavy favorite to succeed Speaker John Boehner. One analyst says there are 3 compelling reasons why the former GOP vice presidential nominee would decide against the promotion.
One we all know about. He has young kids and would like to go to their soccer games. Number 2 is the fact that he really would like to work on tax reform as chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. The 3rd reason may be the most important, and that is he knows he's going to have to deal with Nancy Pelosi.
If he problems, perhaps his most challenging task in winning the speakership election, block conservative House Republicans, the Freedom Caucus, to support him.
He's a great communicator, the kind of messenger I think probably on him.
Though Jordan also wants rule changes his conservative bloc is demanding. Upon denying countless times that Ryan is running for Speaker, his communications director tweeted this morning, quote, "Before you ask, nothing has changed and I don't anticipate any news this week," unquote. Sources claim senior Republicans continue lobbying Ryan to run. If he rejects their pleas, the race returns to the dozen or so House Republicans who are mulling or have declared their interest. The more conservative wing of the party has endorsed Florida Congressman Dan Webster. House Oversight Committee Chairman Jason Chaffetz says he's also running, though he has also said he hopes Ryan runs. Congress returns from recess next week, facing lawmakers approaching deadlines on government spending, the debt ceiling, and transportation funding. Issue: how much will they court Democrats for votes? And whose responsibility is that going to be? Brett?
Rich, thank you. Senior political analyst Bert Hume is here tonight with his analysis that Paul Ryan's decision should not be that hard. Good evening, Brett.
Hi, Brett. Paul Ryan might be able to be elected Speaker of the House, but he would be a fool to take the job. That's because the House Republican caucus is at the moment essentially ungovernable, thanks to a rump group of backbench members. They number but a few dozen, but enough to deprive their fellow Republicans of a GOP majority on any vote, including the one for Speaker, on which they don't get their way. Take the question of a government shutdown, something they always seem prepared to allow. The supporters contend that the famous 1995 shutdowns under then Speaker Newt Gingrich were a great success and led to a balanced budget and welfare reform. But listen to what Gingrich himself wrote about the first shutdown. Quote, "We not only lost the battle over the legislation itself, but the far more important one for the public's approval," end quote. And the second shutdown, Gingrich said, quote, "seared into the public's mind a deeply negative impression," end quote. Shutdown defenders also argue that the one in 2013 paved the way for the GOP landslide a year later.
But a Gallup poll taken during the shutdown found that the Republican Party's favorability rating had plunged 10 points from the previous month to the lowest level Gallup had ever recorded. The party recovered only after the shutdown ended and was quickly followed by the disastrous rollout of Obamacare. With people who support such tactics holding veto power over anything you try to pass, would you want to be Speaker of the House? Brett?
We've talked about this environment. People are mad. They're angry. They are anti-Washington, anti-establishment. These lawmakers in this Freedom Caucus feel like they were elected to stand up to something and do something. And this is their interpretation of that.
Well, there are about 40 of them, and no doubt that's how they feel. There are also 207 other House Republicans. So when you're looking at it, who are the true Republicans and whose wishes should be heeded, the 40 or the 207? Which raises this question. These people are fond of calling others rhinos. But if 207 are going in one direction, Republicans, and 40 are going in another, who are the real Republicans in name only? Rhinos.
Strong letter to follow. All right, Britt, thank you.
You bet.
Up next, Colorado is rolling in tax dollars because of legal marijuana. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 13 in Memphis with a scheduled court appearance tomorrow for a man accused of killing an off-duty police officer. Lorenzo Clark is charged in the death of 31-year-old Terrence Ulrich. The two men were neighbors. Police say an argument escalated into a shootout. Clark surrendered peacefully after the incident. Fox Carolina in Greenville with the reopening of all southbound lanes of Interstate 95. Some northbound lanes are expected to reopen late today, early tomorrow possibly. The State Transportation Department says it has spent 4,000 man-hours replacing bridges along the highway since massive flooding earlier this month. And this is a live look at New York from our affiliate Fox 5 as the sun sets there. The big story there tonight, a flight from New Jersey headed for Seattle makes an emergency landing in Buffalo after a credit card reader catches fire. The crew of the Alaska Airlines Flight 17 put it out with a fire extinguisher. No injuries reported there. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.